We have NBC's Gary Grumbach in Delaware tracking the president's debate plans. Also with us, Democratic strategist Tara Dowdell and former White House spokesman for President George W. Bush, Pete Seat. So good to see you all. Let's start with the reporting. Gary, what can you tell us about President Biden's approach to debate prep?
Hey there, Anna. Yeah, it has been 1,300 days since the last time these two men were on a debate stage together, but it's like no time has passed at all when it comes to how these two candidates are preparing for the debate. We expect President Biden to prepare quite a bit. It's going to involve a lengthy stay at Camp David, the mountainside retreat for presidents in Maryland, and it's going to involve a lot of conversations between him and top advisor. It's also going to involve full 90-minute mock debates between him, somebody who we don't know yet, who is playing Donald Trump, and they're going to go at it. And there's going to be two things they're really going to focus on during this debate prep. First, it is going to involve the policy aspect of things. Are you better off right now than you were 4 years ago? And what do you expect to happen over the next 4 years? What do you want to happen over the next 4 years as it relates to the economy and as it relates to reproductive rights? So that's the policy aspect of things. There's also going to be the personal attacks aspect of things, because if there's one thing we know about former President Donald Trump is that he enjoys a jab or two, an attack or two against his opponents. We expect that to be sometimes personal as well. And we expect President Biden to really to accept those attacks and to push back a little bit as well and not just take them in as attacks. So that's part of the preparation part of things. He is going to have a little bit of help from his friends as well. We expect a lengthy list of White House senior advisors and campaign officials to be traveling to Camp David to be with him, longtime advisors, including Steve Ricchetti, including the former Chief of Staff Ron Klain, Anita Dunn, and others, to be there helping him out along the way.
Gary, historically, the first debate for an incumbent can be kind of dicey, but the Biden team thinks they can avoid that fate?
They absolutely do, and it becomes kind of dicey because you were so long used to a hello, Mr. President and sir, but when you get on a debate stage, it's going to be Donald Trump versus Joe Biden, and it is going to get a little bit personal, and that's where President Biden hopes to be able to push back a little bit and attack a little bit towards former President Trump as well, because we do know former President Trump does have the ability to get under people's skins, but the Biden administration hopes that President Biden will be able to push back on that.
Gary Grumbach, thank you so much. So, of course, Tara, these two men debated each other 4 years ago now. But how do you even prepare for a debate against Trump, somebody who disregards basic facts?
Exactly. And I think that Biden knows that. So that's rule number one. Know your opponent, right? And one thing about Donald Trump, he's, if anything, consistent. So we know he's going to go down and dirty. We know he's going to be wild and probably unhinged and constantly interrupting President Biden. So President Biden knows that. Trump is going to be Trump. And so I think he's preparing to debate him on those terms. I think he's also going to let Trump do what he does because it's a turnoff for a lot of voters, right? Particularly the reasonable voters, the ones that Joe Biden is seeking to persuade. Those people do not like a wild, nasty person. So I think he's going to let Trump, give Trump some rope to hang himself a bit, too.
And Pete, Trump's team seems to be saying the campaign trail is his debate prep. One senior advisor saying he talks with voters in town halls, speaks to thousands at rallies. He frequently takes questions from the press. Another advisor saying Trump takes on numerous tough interviews every single week and delivers lengthy rally speeches while standing, demonstrating elite stamina. Again, those are their words. Pete, is that enough? What do you make of that approach?
Well, there's no debate prep like actual debate prep. I've prepped candidates in the past, never a presidential candidate, but candidates for governor and U.S. Senate. And you can tell the difference when they're on stage, whether or not they went through the motions of debate preparation. The way I would always approach it is I would come at them like a spider monkey. I wanted them to be completely uncomfortable in that moment so they were ready for anything that came their way. The difference between Donald Trump and Joe Biden is Trump can take the incoming. He just lets it roll off his sleeves. He's Teflon Don, as we've said in the past. Joe Biden, I think, really does need to get used to the attacks that will come at him, particularly as it relates to his son. He might show a little bit of temper, but if he shows too much, I don't think that's going to sell with the American people. But if Trump was smart, he would still do it. He would still stand behind a podium for 90 minutes and make sure he is as comfortable as he could possibly be come Thursday night.
I see you shaking your head in disagreement, Tara.
There is no way that Trump is enormously sensitive. He is definitely someone that is easily offended, particularly if you're making fun of him. And so I think that's also going to be a strategy of President Biden and his debate prep. Trump does not have thick skin. That's one thing he doesn't have. He has a big ego and thin skin.
And you were on The Apprentice, so you saw Trump up close. Do you think he really isn't preparing for the debate?
He's absolutely preparing for this debate. He may not prepare in the traditional way, but he is going to prepare. I saw him rehearsing lines for The Apprentice, which is a reality show, so you can speak off the cuff. It's literally reality. But Trump sat there and he prepared lines. He would stop. We heard him do it. He would stop the actual show taping if he wanted to do something over. So he was very much prepared. I think his strategy is to lower expectations by saying he's not going to prepare, but he absolutely will. He does before every rally, even though he may ramble, but that's because he's lost some steps. That's why he's rambling. But Trump practices his lines. He practices his name calling, his nickname, his nasty nicknames. And that's who Trump is.
So, Pete, we just learned that the independent candidate, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., did not make this first debate with the requirements. Is this a particular advantage for either Biden or Trump? Does it change either of their approaches?
I think it's an advantage for the American people. I personally don't think that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. should be on a debate stage. Right now, he only qualifies for 89 Electoral College votes, more than I qualify for, which is 0. So there's no chance he's going to be the next president of the United States. At best, he's a sideshow. At worst, he's a spoiler. So why would we want him on the stage? Either Joe Biden or Donald Trump, for better or worse, is going to be the next president, and the American people deserve to hear from those two candidates and only those two candidates.
Pete Seat and Tara Dowdell, thank you both so much for that conversation.